Hey guys, welcome to Motoroids. My name is Amit and this is the Citroen C3, and I was very excited to drive this car because I really wanted to see what this famed car maker from Europe can do with a car that is made in India, made for India. And boy oh boy, does this car really pack some surprises. Now, when you talk about Citroen C5 Aircross, which was launched a while back, the primary theme around that car was comfort, and I was really looking forward to see how big a difference can Citroen, which is known the world over for its suspension, can make to this class. And they have lived up to their reputation. And guys, I can tell you that this car by far is the most absorbent car with the plushest suspension in its class. So if you're looking for something which is very comfortable, goes over bad roads like you are gliding over it, what Citroen calls the magic carpet ride, this really is a car which is going to fit the bill for you. So the suspension here is the absolute highlight, and while the suspension is great, it's not a driver's car per se. The engine here is a 1.2 liter naturally aspirated unit, and this is just one of the two engines. Citroen calls this engine Pure Tech, and while the engines are more or less same, they are 3-cylinder units, this engine is 1cc less than the turbo. The power here is okay, it's 83 PS, and the torque is 115 Newton meters, which is best in class for the NA engines. Acceleration, according to my tests, is about 14 seconds, give or take a couple of decimals, but about 14 seconds. But if you want more performance, you have the other one, which is a turbo, and the power there is 110 PS. Torque is 190 Newton meters, which is again best in class. And I'm going to be testing that engine as well. But for now, the fuel efficiency on this engine is 19.8 kmpl as per the official figures. However, in the real world, you'll get about 14 kmpl in stop-start city conditions, and on the highway, you'll get about 17 to 18 based on how you're driving and how the driving conditions are. Another important thing that you are interested in is how is it to drive. Now, that's one aspect where this car probably could have been better. And the steering has a decent amount of weight, and it looks very small, is very chunky to hold. There's good visibility all around. You sit very high up. It is like a cross between a hatchback and an SUV, not too high up, but not too low either. But the thing that's missing here is that connect. The steering feels very, very inert. It doesn't feel very engaging, and it's quite neutral at dead center. There's absolutely no movement when you are moving it at the dead center. So in terms of engagement, in terms of drive feel, this car probably could have been better. There is also a sense of wallowiness around bends. The body roll really isn't the best control. So if you're looking for a driver's car, this probably isn't the one for you, but the comfort is absolutely kick-ass. And another highlight of this engine is its tractability. It's very, very refined. It feels very smooth. It's a 3-cylinder unit, but it doesn't have that noise that you generally associate with 3-cylinder units. Super refined, also very, very tractable. So on this instrument console, there is no tachometer, so I cannot give you the exact readings as to what are the engine speeds when I'm doing certain speeds. But let's talk about the gear speeds first. And in the first gear, this car can go to 54 kilometers per hour. In the second gear, 97 kilometers per hour. In the third gear, it goes up to 135 kilometers per hour. 0 to 100, as I mentioned, is about 14 seconds. And tractability is something which is a highlight. So if you are in the fifth gear on this naturally aspirated engine, you have this 5-speed empty. On the turbo, you have a 6-speeder, which again is a highlight because other cars in this segment are generally 5-speeders. This is a 6-speeder unit on the turbo. And in the fifth gear, you can start pulling from as low as 35 kilometers per hour. Fifth gear is rather tall. In the fourth gear, you can start pulling from 25 kilometers per hour. And in the third gear, from as low as 18 kilometers per hour, this car starts pulling. So in stop-start traffic, you don't really have to shift gears. However, there is a bummer. You don't really have an automatic or an AMT even as an option. And in due course, I really hope that Citroen brings that feature, because in metros, that really has become a necessity. And while this is very, very tractable, I really hope that there is an automatic, because no matter how tractable an engine is, sometimes you do want an automatic. So the real takeaway for me is the ride quality, which is astounding. The NVH levels are probably the best in class. There is absolutely no noise coming from the outside. The engine noise filtering into the cabin is very, very low. Engine is super smooth, very, very tractable. The fuel efficiency is respectable, not the best in class, of course. You have the Swift and the Baleno, the cars which really can deliver the best fuel efficiency in the class, but boy oh boy, this car rides really, really well. The ground clearance here is 180 mm, so over bad surfaces, this car feels really, really nice, can go over really bad roads in the hinterlands. And while this may look like a very urban kind of an SUV, I really think that people from the hinterlands who drive this car are going to find a really solid appeal to this car. The clutch action is light, so it's not going to take a toll on your left leg. The gearbox, I really believe, while it's light, the throws are not too long, but it's not the slickest shifting gearboxes that I've come across. There is a marked notchiness to the gearbox, very mild rubberiness as well, and I think the gearboxes on Maruti Suzuki and Hyundai are better. This is not bad per se, but this is not the slickest shifting gearboxes that I've come across either. But what I really love about this car is the way it goes over bad surfaces, the way it insulates you, and the way it makes you feel comfortable, insulated, cocooned. I really think that for this class, if you're looking for something which is kind of a cross, something which is somewhat in the SUV segment, something which feels spacious and solid built, this car really, really impresses. The build quality is another highlight of this car, and dare I say that this probably is the most well-built car, the most solid feeling car in this segment. So to cut a long story short, great ride quality, fantastic build quality, great tractability, but not a driver's car, not very engaging. There is a lot of body roll, and the steering probably could have been a little bit better. Alright, so while the naturally aspirated engine is not something which is very exciting, it's very tractable, very practical, but boy oh boy, this 1.2 liter turbo engine is something. Dare I say, this probably is the most exciting engine in this class, along with probably the one on the Hyundai i10, and 110 PS of power, which is not the best in class. The most amount of power is on the 1.2 turbo of the Hyundai i10, but the torque here is 190 Newton meters, which is best in class by some margin, 18 Newton meters more than the i20 turbo. And boy, does that reflect in the way this car drives. The torque surge in the mid-range is addictive, and while the steering is still not as connected as the naturally aspirated, but I think the added weight of the turbo makes it slightly better, and it feels a little bit more engaging. But the engine, it just makes you press it harder and harder. In the real world, it's going to let you go very fast because there's a very strong mid-range. You won't really have to shift too much, and the healthy torque in the middle of the rev range is going to let you drive this car very, very swiftly in real world conditions. You are going to enjoy driving this car. Although I really wish it had better dynamic ability, it was slightly more firmly set up, at least on the turbo, because this engine really lends itself for some enthusiastic driving. It's a shame that the steering doesn't have a connected feel, and the suspension is somewhat soft. Not an enthusiast car in that sense, but this engine is really, really beautiful. And the 0 to 100 here comes here in a very, very swift 10 seconds, which is very respectable for a car which is not supposed to be very expensive. Now, I tested it for the gear speeds also, and since there are more gears here, you have a 6-speeder transmission unit. Again, no automatic, but this manual is slightly better. It's not as notchy. The rubberiness is also a little less, so this gearbox is better than the 5-speed manual, and I like this one over the 5-speeder. Now, since you have more gears, the gears are spread out, and the first 2 gears are shorter. So the first gear you'll reach 52 kilometers as opposed to 54 on the other one, and in the second gear 92 as opposed to 97 on the other one. And in the third gear, with this engine transmission, this car is going to cross 140 at 144 kilometers per hour. While the first 2 gears are shorter, the third gear takes you to a higher speed, and the tractability here is also pretty good, not bad at all for a turbo. There is a very mild lag, but I don't really think that's going to be a problem. In the 6th gear, you can drive it from 50 kilometers per hour onward. In the 5th gear, from 45 kilometers per hour onwards. In the 4th gear, 35 kilometers per hour onwards. And in the 3rd gear, it can start rolling from as low as 25 kilometers per hour. So quite a tractable engine, this one as well. And while there is not a tacho, if I could understand what the engine is trying to tell me, uh, at 1000 rpm, a little less than 1000, where the engine is just about idling. You do have to like press a little bit for letting the turbo to start spooling up. At about 1400 1500 rpm, from what I can hear, you have the turbo kicking in and you have some motion building on. At 2000 rpm, you can feel that the turbo has somewhat built up, and from there the torque starts spreading its magic. And from what I understand, at about 3000 rpm, you have this really healthy surge of torque coming in, which makes this car just go. And on a highway, it's going to be quite an experience driving this car. It's going to be lovely driving, because if you're not around bends, it would feel very nice. It can be very swift. And the fuel efficiency here, although it's lesser than what you have on NA at 19.4 kmpl, I really believe that on the highway, if you're just cruising, this car can give you about 21-22 kmpl easy if you're not pushing it. So on the highway, I really believe that this car can actually give you better fuel efficiency. Within the city, about 14-15 kmpl should be easily achievable, but the fuel efficiency here is quite good. It's not bad at all, and for the kind of power this car has, the kind of smile that it brings on your face, I think that the fuel efficiency here is pretty good. Rest of the things are pretty much the same. The insulation is fantastic, the suspension is beautiful, everything else is good. I really believe that because of the added weight up front, this one feels slightly better and more connected than the naturally aspirated. But in a straight line, boy, for this segment, this engine is standout. Alright, so we have already talked about the performance of this car, and now it's time to look at the size and the design of this car. So where exactly is the Citroen C3 placed in terms of its dimensions? So Citroen isn't exactly calling this an SUV, they're calling it a raised hatchback, which is somewhat a cross. So it's somewhere a cross between a hatch and an SUV. And if you really compare the size of this car in terms of absolute size, it's probably a cross between something like the Swift and the Punch. And in terms of the wheelbase, it's really amazing, because its wheelbase is about 90 to 100 mm longer than the cars in those segments. If you compare it with the overall bigger Kiger also, the wheelbase is longer by 40 mm. And while the overall length is longer than the Swift and the Punch, it's slightly shorter than the cars like the Kiger and Magnite. So in that sense, it's quite a big car for the segment. The width is good, although it's not the best in segment. The Swift and Punch both are wider. In terms of height, it's taller than the hatchbacks, but slightly shorter than SUVs like the Punch and the Kiger. So it's quite a spacious car and looks rather nice as well. Now, the C5 Aircross really impressed us with its styling, and this one looks like a mini-me version of the C5 Aircross. Citroen is one of the car makers which is known for its design, and their understanding of proportions and evolved design is very clearly visible in the way this car looks. Very beautiful. And just like the C5 Aircross, it does have a personality of its own. It looks muscular, it looks very youthful, and it does look very nice to my eyes. It has a raised bonnet to give it an SUV-like stance. These twin chevrons, they come out in chrome lines and meet with these two DRLs. And with the lower DRL, you also have this chrome. Headlight unit is halogen, and apart from the DRLs, you don't have any LED lighting on this car. So the headlamp, the fog lamps, the blinkers, everything is a bulb. Now, you have this black plastic here and a honeycomb mesh here, a light grey and this platinum grey here. So this highlight that you see here and some other highlights like the one on the side on top of the cladding and at the rear can be customized in 3 colors, this platinum grey or orange or chrome. And apart from that, this car comes in 4 solid colors, which are white, orange, platinum grey and steel grey. And apart from those 4 solid colors, you have 2 roof color options, which are orange and platinum grey. So with the remaining 3 colors, apart from the color that you're choosing for the roof, if you put it all together, there are 10 two-tone options. So 10 plus 4, 14 colors. And all of those colors look really nice. Interestingly, this car comes with 2 greys, and that's primarily because people don't want to see their cars very dirty, and I think it's a very informed decision that Citroen have taken. Now, in terms of features, there are some missing ones. You don't have, front sensors or 360-degree camera, some of the features that some of the new cars are getting. But this is going to be an affordable car. It's not meant to be very premium. Its engineering, the engine, suspension, the space inside and the practicality are its USPs, and of course the design. But some features are missing definitely. Now if you come towards the side, you'll see the side cladding, these squared off wheel arches. The cladding is available only on the top of the line Field variant. There are two variants, Live and Field. The lower variant, the Live variant, is available only with the naturally aspirated engine. That engine can also be had with the Field variant, but the turbo is available only with the Field variant. Now there are a lot of differences between these two variants, and I'm going to list them all out before I enter the car. But for now, you would appreciate the two-tone roof, this platinum grey color for the roof rails, which is standard across all the roof color options. You don't have a shark fin antenna, you won't get a sunroof, but this greenhouse area is pretty big, makes the interiors look very spacious and airy. You also have this cladding here. The door handles are old school. You also don't have ORVM mounted blinkers. The blinker is right here, and that too is a bulb. Ground clearance is pretty good. The approach and departure angles are pretty good. The place where we are, if you look there, there are some really big stones there, and the approach to this place is not very easy. This car took some really bad surfaces in its stride very easily, and this 180 mm of ground clearance is sufficient for the bad roads that abound in our country. The tire size is 195 section, and it provides great grip, although I really believe that, as I mentioned before, the firmness on the suspension could have been a little bit better. And while there is no dearth of grip from the tires, I really believe that this car could have been a little bit more sportier to drive. Another element that you would probably appreciate is the fact that you have this matte taping on A, B and C pillars. What I really would have wanted is a big sporty spoiler at the rear, and that really would have given this car a more sporty feel, is what I believe. Now, just like the front, at the rear also the tail lights are all bulbs. There is no LED element here, and the blinkers as well are bulbs. The reverse light is only on the left hand side, and on the right it's just a blank. At the lower part you have this black plastic cladding, and this insert here also, as I mentioned, can be had in three colors: orange, platinum grey, which is this one, or chrome. The big bummer for me, there are some missing features inside also, but the two things that I miss the most on this car are a rear wash and wipe, which is not available even on the top variant, and a rear view camera. And I think these are two important features which should have been included, although Citroen says that some trims which are being exported have those features. So if there's a demand, they'll take no time in introducing those features and making them available, and I really hope that they do. You also have this high mount stop lamp, and once you open the boot, you would see a rather nice 315 liters of boot space. This parcel shelf that you see here is only available on the top variant, not on the Live variant. You have these two hooks, although there is no illumination. These two hooks can take the weight of 3 kgs each. This rubber mat can be cleaned very easily and is a nice inclusion. The spare is under the mat, and the loading bay is quite deep. For the top variant you get a 185 15 section spare, while for the lower variant you get a 165 14-inch spare. Even on the top variants you don't have an alloy wheel as an option, although there are 56 accessories that can be put on this car, and in terms of customization you can really play around and go bonkers with the Citroen C3. Now it's time to get inside the car, and before that we need to have a look at this key. Rather simplistic, has these two chevrons, which is Citroen's logo, and lock unlock buttons, and you will have to take the key out to unlock the car. But before we get inside, as I promised, I'll let you know the differences between the Live and the Field variants. Now in the Field variant you will get body colored outside door handles, wheel arch cladding, front skid plate, LED DRLs, glossy black roof rails, option of dual tone roof. Upholstery would be different. It's called Hexalite. On the lower variant you have Nimbus, glossy black AC vents, chrome inside door handles, chrome accents inside, 10-inch touchscreen, Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, 4 speakers, audio controls on steering, rear power windows, remote keyless entry, height adjustable driver seat, tilt steering, parcel shelf, seat back pocket, co-driver sun visor, USB sockets at the rear, and door ajar warning. Now once you open the doors, they open quite wide and the opening is quite big, so the entry is very easy, and the quality of plastics here is pretty good. Everything is very well finished, and what I really like is that the neatness here is exemplary, and the doors shut with a lot of solidity. This car feels like it's very, very well built, and while that's not very evident, the feel good factor about this car, the solidity of this car, is something that you have to feel to believe. This door pocket is a contrasting color. You have enough and more space for a very big water bottle. Now the one thing that's missing here is electric controls for the ORVMs, and while that is an omission, you have this rather long stick to control the position of the mirror, which is good because that way you can actually access the other control also while sitting in the driver's position. So that's one good thing. Now the one interesting thing about this car is that all the 4 window glasses are one touch down, which is generally a feature that you don't even see in more premium cars, but that's one thing that Citroen has provided here. And then you obviously have these door pulls. Getting inside, as I mentioned, is very easy, ideal ride height for the driver, and you have this manual seat adjust. You can lock the windows using this button here, and this is the fog lamp button, and this is the leveler. And then as you look at the whole dashboard, it looks very different, reminds you somewhat of the C5 Aircross, and I really think that it has a character of its own. And the standout feature here is this rather large 10-inch infotainment screen, which is well made, although some features are missing, but still looks nice. But this instrument console is rather basic, and while you have all the information that you need, like the speedo, average fuel efficiency, distance to dry, etc., fuel gauge and engine temperature, there is no tacho, and for testers like us that's a problem, but for an everyday user that should not be much of a problem. But this definitely could have been a little bit more premium. Since this is the high variant, you have steering mounted controls, and you don't have features like cruise control also here. Another feature that's missing here is a day-night RVM, and this doesn't have the dimming function. Even a manual dimming function is not there, but the screen looks rather nice, and as I mentioned, it comes with Android Auto and Apple CarPlay, which is wireless. So that's a pretty good feature, and you can use navigation on the screen. Now this color that you see here can also be had in orange, and that really makes the car look beautiful from the inside, even funkier. These AC controls are also quite unique, and they have this chrome lining. So some money has been spent on making this dash look rather special. This infotainment screen does not have any physical controls. I would have wanted it to have some controls for volume at least, but that is not the case. Horizontal AC vents in the middle, and this satin silver finish at the lower part of the dashboard. You can probably place something here, but it's slanting, not very useful, but if you wish, you can put something here. The glove box is reasonably sized, it's not too small, but it does not come with a cooling function. But there is a ton of space inside to put your little knickknacks. You have this shelf here to put your cell phone. You have this rather deep cavity where you can put a wallet, a cell phone or whatnot. There are 2 cup holders, and then you have this little crevice here, so there's no dearth of spaces to put stuff in this car. In terms of charging options, you have this 12-volt power socket and 1 USB socket, so that is well covered, and this hazard button sits right here. The steering, as you would imagine, is only tilt adjustable, and that too is available only in the top variant. You have vanity mirror on the passenger side, not on the driver's side, and then you have this control for the light here. What I really like about the interior here is the way everything is built. It's really beautifully finished, and everything is hard wearing plastic. It feels like it's built very, very well, built for lasting a very long time, and the finish of everything is just perfect. And it's that precision with assembly that Citroen has, which has really, really impressed me. The build quality here is absolutely flawless. Since this is not a very premium car, the quality of materials could probably have been a little bit better, but I'm not complaining because I know that this is going to be at an affordable price point. Now the headrests for these seats are not adjustable, they are integrated, and the fabric that you see here is for the top variant. For the lower variant, you'll have a different fabric. It's two-tone, and you also have this contrasting stitching to make it look nicer. This contrasting stitching can be seen on the gear shifter as well. Satin silver inserts at a lot of places, chrome inserts on dials. It misses out on an automatic climate control, but the AC here is supposed to work very, very well in the Indian summer heat. It's been specially designed for India. This car has been designed for India, and the AC is supposed to be very strong. Today the weather was not bad at all, but generally on a hot summer day this should cool well, because for the time we used the AC there was no problem whatsoever. A few other features that some other cars in the segment have and this one does not is connected car features like the ones that you see in Hyundai. wireless charging. So there are some features missing and there's no escaping that, but overall the build quality is pretty good and everything is very neatly finished. An automatic option also is not there, as I mentioned before. Also, an auto start stop feature could probably have been integrated in this car. I have already talked about the lack of a rear wash wipe and a rear view camera, but apart from that the visibility is very nice and you can really maneuver this car very well. Turning radius is very short and it's less than 5 meters, so very maneuverable car. So all of it is very well built. It should suit a lot of Indian customers, and surprisingly, while this is supposed to be an urban car, I see its utility a lot in the hinterlands. In the rural areas, people would really appreciate this car because it's built solid, it rides very well and it's very maneuverable, looks nice. So in that sense the feature set is pretty good, but there are obviously some omissions. Audio quality is pretty good. It's not the best in class, but it's not bad either. The speakers don't blast when you turn up the volume, and in that sense the audio is pretty good. There are 2 airbags on this car and the build quality, as I see right now, is pretty good. There is no NCAP test rating of this car available, but I generally believe that compared to the other cars in the segment, it should stand pretty well, especially with the Marutis and the Hyundais. But whether it gets a 5-star rating like the Punch is something that only time will tell. Now, while the front door opens really wide, this door probably could have been a little bit bigger for my liking, but getting inside should not be a problem. And the materials at the rear are the same as what you saw up front. And here, of course, you have the space for a 1-liter water bottle, child lock, and getting inside is not as easy as the front because this car comes with theatre-like seating, so the rear seat is slightly higher than the front. And as you can see, there is ample knee room and ample leg room. The front seat is quite high up, so you can really slide your legs underneath it, and I don't really think there is any problem whatsoever for me sitting here being 5 feet 10. And the headroom also, as you can see, is pretty good. So even if you are, say, 6 feet 1 or 2, you should not have any problem sitting here. The thigh support is also pretty good and the quality of the foam is also pretty nice. It's not bad at all. Now this seat should probably have been 60-40 split, but it's not, so that's one missing feature. And apart from that, you also don't get adjustable headrests. So these are the things that you miss here. I don't have a light here. Rear AC vents are not there, although you do have this space, which is a cup holder cum bottle holder, and you can also put your cell phone here if you so wish. You also have these seat back pockets, which are pretty useful. The buttons for the windows are positioned here, so the rear passengers can also access it from here. The width of the car is pretty good, so you actually can seat 3 abreast here for short journeys. And although there is this hump here, but the width of the car would allow 3 fully grown people to sit here, at least for short journeys. Now this little space here is a good armrest and makes longer journeys easier, but what I'm missing right now is an armrest in the middle, and had I had an armrest here as well, it would really have added to the comfort that Citroen is talking about. Now the line for the windows is pretty high up, but still it doesn't feel claustrophobic. You get ample light inside and it feels like a very airy and spacious cabin. So that's one good thing about this car. Space inside this car is one of its highlights, and it's also very evident while you're sitting in the back seat. I really wish that the seat was 60-40 though, and it also does not comes with ISOFIX child seat mounts, which again is a bit of an omission in my personal opinion. You get a lap belt for the third passenger. Of course, this is not a premium car, so you won't get a proper seat belt, but a very nice feature that Citroen has provided for is 2 USB sockets. So if you have 2 electronic items, so both the passengers at the rear will get their individual connections to charge their respective devices. Now the suspension here is fantastic, as I mentioned before, and the ride quality is amazing. Insulation is amazing. So if you're going to be sitting in the back seat, this has to be one of the most comfortable cars in this segment in terms of space, in terms of ride quality, and in terms of overall comfort. So when Citroen says that they focus on comfort, the comfort here is going to be pretty good, although there are some features missing, just as it's the case up front. Now once you open the bonnet, there are some interesting things, and first is this heavy insulation that has been used to improve the insulation on the inside, which is obviously amazing, and this engine fills the bay rather well. And one interesting thing that the top management at Citroen told us is the bay and everything else is built for simplicity and easy access, so that even if something breaks down, it's easy to access and easy to repair, simple to repair. So the repair costs on this car are not going to be too much. So as it would appear, I have told you everything about this car, but have I? I don't know the pricing, but if I do some math, I would like to think that this car would be a direct competitor to the Swift and the Punch, which are priced rather similarly. And the naturally aspirated version of this car should be priced somewhere between 6 to 8.5 lakh rupees. I cannot really be sure because the pricing has not been revealed yet. But there are some missing features, and while the build quality, the suspension, the ride, the space, everything is very solid, very impressive, you cannot really go around those missing features. So I would really appreciate if Citroen shows value to the Indian customer by undercutting the prevalent players in that segment and gives them a little bit of a discount, at least for the initial part, before this car establishes itself. As for the turbo variant, I think the price would be a little under 9 lakh rupees, and that would be a good pricing. But I would want Citroen to initially launch it with a very aggressive price tag. If you're going to be buying in this segment, I really request you to wait and check this car out, test drive this car, because the feel from behind the wheel of this car is very different from what is available on the market right now. By 20th July, the car will be launched. Bookings will start early in July, and if you're going to make a buying decision in this segment, wait for this car, test drive this, and then make your decision. I really hope that I was able to answer all your questions about this car, but if you like such in-depth, really deep reviews, the least you can do is like our video, share it with your friends, and let your friends know about it, because good content, in-depth content takes a lot of hard work, a lot of research. And if you like our content, share it. It really gives us the motivation that we need to keep going and keep coming up with good content for you. Hoping that you would like and share this video and subscribe to Motoroids. This is your friend Amit Changani signing off. Rev hard, rev free, and drive safe.